just done driving this new premium SUV and it's left me with a very important question. How do we measure luxury? Is it the way the key feels in your hand? Nice and heavy? Is it the fact that the boot opens up on its own knowing that your hands are full of luggage? Is it the feel on the door handle or the door itself that feels heavy and solidly built? Is it the fact that the power driver's seat moves back on its own to ensure that you get in easily? Is it that reassuring thud with which the doors close? Or is it the soft touch material on the dash and the door pads? If you said yes to all of those points or most of those points, then you are going to like what Mahindra has in store for you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Alturas G4. So, where do we begin? The looks? Okay.
But before we carry on, don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell to stay notified.
The first thing that hits you about the Alturas is its sheer size. In every measurable way, it's big and it does make its presence felt in person. Compared to the international version, there are a few differences though. The obvious one, of course, is the Mahindra grille, and the other noticeable change are these 18-inch alloy wheels that look a size or two smaller than what we'd have liked. The international spec runs a sweet set of 20-inch alloy wheels, and while they would have looked awesome, they just wouldn't be practical enough for our road conditions. What you might not pick on immediately is that the ride height on the India spec car is slightly higher compared to the Rexton. It's got all the luxury elements in place too. Projector headlamps, daytime running lamps, LED fog lamps, puddle lamps, it's got them all. Sure, the design isn't all that striking like a Skoda Kodiaq or outright rugged as a Ford Endeavour. We also think that the rear looks a bit bland and that the central badging looks sorta tacky too. But by the virtue of its size, it's definitely going to command a lot of attention. All those features we spoke about at the start of the video while we were just scratching the surface. The Alturas has a whole lot more to offer, beginning with that 7-inch display right there in the instrument cluster that gives you a host of information, including the vital stats of your drive, 3 different options for the digital speedometer, what audio you're playing, and it also lets you fiddle around with the settings of the car. And I kid you not, it will also let you select the sound of the turn indicator. Completely unnecessary, but we're glad we have a choice. Then it has these little features that make life behind the wheel that much easier. For instance, you've got the 360-degree camera that lets you choose between different views. When you shift it to reverse, you can also use the auto tilt function on the rear view mirrors to make sure you aren't trampling anyone. And the driver's seat that gets memory, 3 settings, and ventilated seats as well. The Alturas features usual expensive car bits too, like dual zone climate control, napa leather upholstery, a sunroof, as well as AC vents for the second and third row. It also gets a touchscreen infotainment system with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. But there is a problem. Problem number 1, this touchscreen that you see here is not the 9.2-inch touchscreen that's available in the global spec Rexton. It is a smaller 8-inch unit. And while we could make peace with the size, we really wish that the graphics were a bit slicker and the response was a bit quicker. The second problem is that you don't get the 10-speaker infinity audio system that you get in the global models. So this grille on the top of the dash, that's for nothing, that's a dummy. The subwoofer, that does not exist in the boot. What you do get instead is a 6-speaker audio system that sounds just about average, not done for a car that costs as much. There are some weird omissions, like the passenger seat, there's no electric adjust, you have to adjust it manually. And finally, no auto dimming rear view mirror either. If you compare the Indian spec car to the global version, you will find more features that have been omitted. The radar-based safety tech has been skipped completely, so you miss out on autonomous emergency braking, lane departure warning, forward collision warning, as well as high beam assist. Wait, I forgot to tell you how the Alturas makes you feel once you're inside the cabin. But before I tell you that, remember that it is a big climb inside the cabin. If elders in the family are going to be using the car, make sure you get the side steps fitted as an accessory. They are most definitely going to need them. Now, once you're inside, it's all plush. There's soft touch material on the dash, on the door pads. The seats get fine quality napa leather. And there are smaller touches like the knurled finish here on the volume knob, on the AC control, on the four-wheel drive control that makes it feel a bit more special. Even the touch and feel of the buttons on the steering wheel, the power window switches, they feel properly premium. But hey, if you want to buy this car, chances are you are looking at spending most of your time here in the second row, and I don't really have any reason to complain. With the driver's seat set to my driving position, I'm roughly 6 feet tall. I've got just about enough knee room, a lot of width and ample headroom as well. To make myself more comfortable, there's this nice and chunky armrest, and if I want to get even more comfortable, I can always choose to recline the bench altogether. The room in the second row could be better, and you sense it isn't as good as it could be because the engineers had to make room for the third row. And to make matters worse, the second row doesn't slide at all. You do sense that this has been done intentionally to ensure there's some space in the third row. And speaking of the third row, here's a proper headache. You see those two levers on the second row? You have to tug at both of them to make the seats tumble forward. There is no one-touch tumble. Take a look. And when you do, you'll find that the third row is placed on the floor. This is clearly meant for kids because for adults it will get uncomfortable very quickly. What will amplify the uneasiness for an adult is that the window area for the third row is tiny and further ahead. Add the black headliner in the mix and it all feels a bit too cozy. With all three rows of seats in place, you have access to about 243 liters of boot space. The third row splits 50-50, whereas the second row gets a 60-40 split, so there's a lot of versatility to be had here. If you fold the third and the second row away, there's enough room for you to transport a bed, a cupboard, or maybe both. Finally, there is an electric tailgate, so you don't have to worry about the heavy hatch at all. Let's look at the specs. 2.2 liter diesel engine, 181 horsepower, 420 Newton meters of torque, a 7-speed gearbox sourced from Mercedes-Benz, shift on the fly 4-wheel drive. Promising, right? Now fire up the engine and it settles into a smooth idle pretty quickly. So you won't really feel that diesel clatter all the time, but you will most definitely hear it. And the engine just gets more and more vocal as you begin to push it. So heads up, if you are looking for a fun to drive SUV, maybe the Alturas isn't the one to pick. It doesn't really like being hustled. When you do, the engine feels a bit strained and the gearbox starts feeling confused. It will hesitate a bit before it gives you the downshift, and you'll notice a lag when it upshifts eventually as well. But should you choose to drive calmly in a relaxed manner, there's absolutely no issue. There's no dearth of power. The gearbox too feels a lot relaxed and you can potter around the city without a hiccup. Yes, you do have to get used to the sheer size of this thing, but even that is pretty easy because you can see the edge of the bonnet from the driver's seat. Inside the city, you will also appreciate the light steering and the ease it brings. At low speeds, the suspension too manages to iron out all the imperfections on the road without batting an eyelid. But there is a problem. and that problem is the high-speed ride quality. Now don't get me wrong, but the Alturas just doesn't feel as planted as a car this size should, and if you hit a bump or a pothole at high speeds, there's a fair bit of rebound from the suspension that can make the occupants feel a bit unsettled. This could have definitely been a lot better. And not that you would, but should you choose to hustle the Alturas around a set of guards, then it will remind you that it is a big fat SUV. There is a lot of body roll when you go into a bend, and if you are in two-wheel drive mode, the rear won't mind stepping out a bit. And this might give you giggles if you're in a small, nimble sports car, but if you're in a car that is as big as this, yeah, it's not fun. The Alturas then is a bit of a mixed bag. It's cause in spades when you bring in the fact that it has a lot of equipment to offer. It does feel posh and does offer a proper luxury experience as well. Where it misses out on is in the driving department. It definitely isn't an enthusiast pleaser and would prefer it if you drove it with a light foot. And on that note, we really wish that the high-speed ride quality was a bit more planted. So let's circle back to the original question. How do you measure luxury? Well, if you told me you measured luxury by looking at the product, the features, the value it brings to the table, then the Alturas will appeal to you a whole lot. But if you refuse to look past the badge,